Welcome back to Face the Nation. Americans are growing increasingly concerned about the war with Iran and its impact. Our latest CBS News poll finds as the approval of Donald Trump's handling of the conflict has dropped to 36%. Back home, the president's ratings on handling of inflation are at the lowest level of his second term, with only 31% approving. For more, we're joined by our Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. Good to have you here, Anthony.
Morning, Margaret.
So what exactly are Americans telling you?
Well, when I just asked how this war is making you feel, the top answers people give are worried and stressed. Let's unpack that. Why? When they look overseas, they see a lot of important goals for the U.S. Big bipartisan majorities think it is important, too. You can go down the list. Stop Iran's nuclear program. Make sure the Iranian people are safe and free. Change the regime, change the leadership in Iran, and most important, open the Strait of Hormuz. And what you see is interesting is when you juxtapose that and ask them, well, have those things been done? You see a dramatically different answer because very few people think that they have. What that collectively tells you is this looks to people like unfinished business. There are goals. OK, the war began. Not everybody liked it. But now they're saying make sure it pays off in ways that come back to the U.S. And let me pick up on that word pays off for a second, because when they talk about opening the strait, so really talking about gas prices.
Right.
And what we've seen is people here telling us those higher gas prices are a financial hardship, difficult to pay. And so that is having an impact both on their views of the economy more generally, as well as their pocketbooks. And you mentioned those ratings at the top. Look, sort of like first rule of politics, gas prices and prices go up and approval ratings start to go down.
Well, the president always uses social media to make, big statements of intent. A few days ago, he posted a particularly incendiary one. It said, quote, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen." That statement drew rebukes from even some of the president's closest supporters, as well as the Pope. You gauged reaction to that rhetoric. What did the American public think?
So by the time we got to talking to them, people had heard and seen that post. And when we showed it to them, the general view was they disliked it. There were some who said, OK, a little bit more like, and those were folks in the MAGA base, not all, but relatively more. But it's also a window into how people process some of these statements, and we've been looking at this for 10 years, that are, if you will, shattering norms or changing the way things have been done in the past. And that is, they thought it was at least as much a negotiating tactic as it was an intention.
So how does all of that impact how the public views the president's leadership?
So one consistent thing through this war is that most people have said they don't feel the administration has clearly explained the goals. I followed up on that this week, and most folks who feel that way think it's that the goals have kept changing that they've heard, not that they haven't articulated anything. So there's that wide array, and they're not clear which one exactly. That relates to most people saying they don't feel Donald Trump has a clear plan for this conflict. Those two things together speak to that collective uncertainty about it, if you will. And when there's uncertainty, you inevitably start to see ratings overall and the feeling that the war isn't going well yet going down.
Anthony Salvanto, interesting stuff. Thank you.
Thanks.
And we'll be right back with a lot more Face the Nation. Stay with us. We're back now with Republican Congressman Mike Turner. Thank you for coming back to town early to talk to us in person.
Thank you.
Let's start on our polling, because you, like many people right now, are running for re-election, right? You look at this poll, 64% of the American people disapprove of the war, 62% say the president has no clear plan. There are these negative perceptions of the president's handling of the economy and inflation. Dayton isn't immune. Gas prices up $1 from where they were same time last year. How are you explaining to people in your district that this war is worth it?
Well, first off, no conflict ever polls well. I mean, when there's a conflict occurring, no one says it's being handled well, because you have to go through the conflict. The president has articulated, I think, very well, that this is about ensuring that Iran does not become a nuclear state. And no one is willing to trade lower gas prices for Iran becoming a nuclear state. And when Vice President Vance stood at the podium and said that the negotiations had broken off because Iran was not willing to declare that they would not become a nuclear state. That should have sent a chill both through Europe and around the world. And I think, for everyone, because that truly is what this is about. That puts away what Senator Warner was trying to dismissively say, that this was not an imminent threat, and what everyone else has been saying in Europe and around the world.
Well, the president says it's an ambition.
But that this is an immediate. The IAEA, Grossi, the director, had said they were weeks away from having enough material to have.
He said there was no evidence that they were pursuing a nuclear weapon.
They were weeks away, and now you have it. No longer can people say that they did not have the ambition. Here they are, all the way at the table. They have been in this massive conflict, and they're unwilling to say they're not going to pursue. They're unwilling to pursue a nuclear weapon.
Preventing that. However, the negotiation itself is proof of the fact that militarily you cannot achieve destruction of nuclear ambition, is it not?
No, it's not, because they're still ongoing, and the president has said
what's ongoing.
This conflict, this act, the negotiations.
But the president said the war's won.
This is not over, and as it's not over, Iran is going to have to come to the realization, as the JCPOA, the original enrichment deal that Obama had negotiated, where he said, we're not going to allow them to have a nuclear weapon, but we're just going to watch.
And they didn't have a nuclear weapon.
And where we're going to watch.
And they don't have a nuclear weapon.
And we're going to watch them enrich until they get close enough, and then we'll take military action. Europe, everyone was a party to this deal. This is not just a United States.
They still won't agree to not get a nuclear weapon.
This is not just a United States issue. As we saw during this conflict, where Iran, in their missile technology, sent a missile all the way to Diego Garcia. This was a wake-up call for Europe. They now have missile technology that can reach Europe.
Right.
This is a terrorist regime, that we cannot allow to have a nuclear weapon.
So you said the president has been very clear here in his goals and intent. Our polling shows the American people aren't persuaded in the same way you are. Let me run through some of the things he said on the Hormuz Strait. At the outset of the war, March 3rd, he said the Navy would begin escorting tankers. No matter what, the U.S. will ensure the free flow of energy to the world. March 9th, he said he was still thinking about taking it over. March 15th, he said it was someone else's problem. Our allies would take care of it. Maybe we shouldn't even be there. We don't need it. We have a lot of oil. 6 days later, he threatened online the U.S. would attack Iran's power plants if it didn't open the strait within 48 hours. March 26th, he went back to blaming allies, saying he's disappointed in NATO.
Margaret, in any conflict,
then
there's
he announced a 2-week ceasefire, saying Iran had agreed to open the strait. I'm not done, because yesterday he said that CENTCOM announced they're sending 2 ships to set the conditions for clearing mines. This morning, he said the Navy's going to start blockading the strait and interdict ships. Is that the final answer? I mean, can you see here why the public doesn't think that the president has a clear strategy?
Your adversary has a vote in this, too, and they have a position in it, too, which there were just negotiations yesterday.
They changed with the
Just yesterday, there were negotiations, and literally, Iran had an opportunity just yesterday to say to the world, we're not going to pursue a nuclear weapon. Can you imagine?
But
the
on the
largest
Strait of Hormuz,
exporter
which is the thing that's causing your gas prices to go up,
having a nuclear weapon, they have been enriching. They have been enriching uranium. They've been enriching to the point where the IAEA, the head of the IAEA, said they were weeks away from having enough to have a nuclear weapon.
There has not been a single congressional hearing on this issue. No one's disagreeing. It's an important one. Since this war began, you have been in session for 11 days, Congressman.
For decades.
Do you think this is adequate oversight?
There have been
of this war?
Decades of, well, actually, we have had classified briefings on this issue. Now, this is an ongoing conflict. There are going to be continued briefings. I think the administration certainly could, and the chairman of the Armed Services Committee has chastised the department on needing to provide Congress with more information, but we've had classified briefings. But the issue that's the crux of this, that Iran cannot be permitted to have a nuclear weapon, which is what the vice president stood before the world and said, that Iran is unwilling to declare just yesterday, which was the breaking point of the negotiations, has been the subject of hearings for decades.
Do you know what the president means when he says that the United States Navy is now going to be blockading the Strait of Hormuz that we are trying to open? Has that been briefed to Congress?
I think, well, of course not, because it was just announced yet as you were
if it was
discussing
a clear
this
strategy
morning.
all along, and this was part of the plan,
What is clear in the strategy, as the president has said, is the Straits are not just a United States issue. It is also a Europe issue. It is a worldwide issue.
And
Iran should not be permitted. Iran should
not
not be permitted to control the Straits, and it's not just a United States issue.
Did they mine it?
And Iran should not be permitted to just decide who gets through. And Europe, our NATO allies, others who have certainly an interest in the Straits, should be coming to the table, and it should not just be a U.S. issue. The president, by saying we're not just going to let them decide who gets through, is certainly calling all of our allies and everyone to the table of this needs to be addressed.
Did they mine the Strait of Hormuz? Because in that tweet today, the president also said they might not have.
Well, I think,
because he said no
I think you'll have to ask the president.
But
it's his
that's
tweet.
the point, that Congress has not been briefed on that. As a member on oversight and armed services, do you feel like this has actually been adequately explained to you? Because the American public does not.
The president just tweeted this morning, so you'll have to ask the president.
We would love to ask the president or the Secretary of State or the Secretary of Defense. But members of Congress from his party are the only ones sitting here today, and we do appreciate you answering questions on it.
Thank you, Margaret.
All right, we'll be right back. On Friday, we spoke with the managing director of the IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, here in Washington. And we began by asking her about the war's impact on the global economy. How do you calculate the economic shock from this Mideast war?
We look at the size of the impact and the duration of impact. And what I can tell you is that this shock is large. 13% of oil, 20% of gas that would have flown in the world is now stuck for 5 weeks and counting. It is global. Everybody uses energy. Everybody feels the pinch of prices going up. And it is asymmetric. It affects different countries differently. If you are in the vicinities of the conflict, it's a big hit on you. If you are an oil importer, it is a big hit on you. If you have no reserves to protect yourself, you're in a very tough situation.
It appears like Asia bore a lot of the economic impact here. South Korea, they've got a big computer chip industry. They have called on their citizens to conserve energy. India, they're rationing energy. The Philippines had a national energy emergency. The Australian gas stations are running out of fuel. It seems like there's a large part of the planet that's really in pain.
Oh, yes. People are hurting. They're hurting because of sheer lack of quantities. If you are in the Philippines, you're queuing the same way people were queuing here in the 70s to fill your tank. They are hurting because they may be in need of helium for semiconductors or for MRIs.
And that comes out of Qatar, out of the Middle East.
That comes out of Qatar, and now it is cut to size. They may be hurting because of fertilizers. Now is the planting season. If you are not getting fertilizers or not getting them at a reasonable price, we may see a spike in food prices coming. They're hurting because of remittances. Just think how many people live in the Gulf, work in the Gulf, send money home to places like India and Bangladesh, and this money is not coming. They're hurting because of transportation. I'll tell you, my heart goes for Sri Lanka, a country that is coming out of a big shock. They were now affected because a third of flights to Sri Lanka go through the Gulf. Now tourism is going to be hammered. So for many, many reasons, countries are affected. And when you look at the size of the impact, it depends on how much your reliance on imports is, but it also depends on what is your fiscal position. Do you have capacity to absorb the shocks.
Right.
Guess who has least capacity? Poor, vulnerable countries. Whether they are in Asia or in sub-Saharan Africa, they're being hammered dramatically. And when we discuss our response, we will zero in on these highly vulnerable countries.
Here, Americans, they're still spending, they're still driving, but they have seen inflation go up, prices at the gas pump.
Right. I mean, the U.S. is in the category of countries that are somewhat less impacted because the U.S. is energy exporter. But as I said, everybody feels the pinch of prices going up. Why? This is a negative supply shocks. You have less energy, but the demand is still the same. What happens? Prices go up. And here in the United States, people have not quite yet seen inflation going down to target. We were projecting this to happen by early 27. Now that may be somewhat delayed. And what does it mean? It means that people experience a tax on their income. Who is most affected? Of course, low-income part of the population.
Well, at one point, oil prices surged nearly 50% because of this war in Iran. And you called it the largest disruption to global energy markets in modern history. As increases, as you said, to fertilizer, to other prices that are going to push up food. Do you see this impact stretching through 2026, even if we get a ceasefire that sticks?
So the impact is baked in because already the tankers that should have arrived in Asia have not arrived, right? So we already have that impact. But then on top of it, we have the infrastructure impact. 72 energy facilities have been hit, 1/3 of them severe damage. You take the gas field in Qatar, it would take 3 to 5 years to reach its full capacity. That has significance. And then we have other infrastructure impacts like refineries. If they don't receive oil on a regular schedule, they have to shut down. When they shut down, to restart, that is with delay. So yes, we are going to see some drag of this crisis over the year. But if we have peace, of course, conditions are likely to improve faster. Above all, because confidence is going to benefit from the knowledge that there is a resolution of the fighting. Before, something that is very important to recognize, the world economy has been incredibly resilient.
Yes.
We have been hit by one shock and another and another. We were actually projecting a small upgrade for growth in 2026, had it not been for this war. Now we are going to have a downgrade, and the size of this downgrade will depend on these two things: duration and speed with which everything can come back to the same level of production that we had before.
Do you think that global economists really overestimated the negative impact of the Trump tariffs?
Very good question. So the fund, when the tariffs came, was among the very few institutions that were not projecting recession. We did project some slowdown in growth. We did see some slowdown in growth.
So it'd be somewhat disruptive.
We thought it would be somewhat disruptive. It was somewhat disruptive. But then what happened was an adjustment in the United States with agreements that have reduced the pressure that tariffs would put here and on the rest of the world. And we saw the rest of the world saying, okay, let's see how we can trade more with each other. Massive increase in trade agreements, more attention to regional trade. If you look at a place like
You're saying
ASEAN,
turning away from the U.S.
Well, the U.S. is saying we want to have an economy that is mostly based on investing at home, having manufacturing at home. That's a choice that the country is making. Other countries are looking into their economic future. Small, open economies, they have no choice. They have to find ways to trade with each other because otherwise it would be very costly for their people. So the developments are relatively calming in a sense that we see trade like water. You put an obstacle, it goes around it.
Our full conversation can be seen on our YouTube channel, website, and our podcast. We'll be right back. Now to some good news.
Houston integrity splashdown.
The Artemis 2 mission has ended, and it was a perfect splashdown for NASA and its crew, with the capsule Integrity landing into the Pacific Ocean just off the coast of San Diego Friday evening. NASA astronauts Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Canadian Jeremy Hansen reflected on their extraordinary mission Saturday after being reunited with their families.
I would suggest to you that when you look up here, you're not looking at us. We are a mirror reflecting you. And if you like what you see, then just look a little deeper. This is you.
The four spent just over 9 days traveling to the far side of the moon, farther than any human had been.
The gratitude of seeing what we saw, doing what we did, and being with who I was with, it's too big to just be in one body.
I know I haven't learned everything that this journey has yet to teach me. But there's one new thing I know, and that is, planet Earth, you are a crew.
It's a special thing to be a human, and it's a special thing to be on planet Earth.
That's it for us today. Thank you all for watching. Until next week. For Face the Nation, I'm Margaret Brennan.